Hey, I want you to imagine something for a second. Picture yourself walking into a small village in the middle of nowhere. It's freezing cold, snow is everywhere, but you can see smoke coming out of the chimneys. You can smell food cooking. Everything looks normal, except for one thing. There is not a single person in sight. No kids running around, no adults talking, no one. Just complete, eerie silence. This is not a made-up horror story. This actually happened. On November 26, 1930, a Canadian newspaper ran a headline that shocked the entire country. They called it the Village of the Dead. An entire community of 150 people had disappeared without a trace. No goodbye, no warning, no explanation. And here's the part that will really mess with your head. They didn't even leave footprints in the snow. So today, let's talk about one of the strangest and most unsettling mysteries in history, the mystery of Angikuni Lake. So, let me set the scene for you. Angikuni Lake sits in the far north of Canada. And when I say far north, I mean really far. This is the kind of place where the cold doesn't just make you uncomfortable, it can kill you. The land is massive and empty, and only a handful of people lived out there. One of those communities was a small group of Inuit people, about 150 of them, who had built their home right on the shores of this lake. They were tough, resourceful people who survived by fishing and hunting, and anyone who passed through would tell you the same thing. These people were warm, welcoming, and full of life. Now, let me introduce you to Joe Labelle. Joe was a fur trapper who spent most of his life traveling through these frozen lands. He was experienced, he knew the area well, and he had visited this Inuit village before. So on one bitterly cold November night in 1930, when he was tired and freezing and needed somewhere to rest, he naturally headed toward the village. He was expecting a fire, a warm meal, and friendly faces. What he got instead changed him forever. As Joe got closer to the village, something felt off. He couldn't quite explain it at first. It was just a feeling, a heavy, uncomfortable silence that sat over the whole place like a blanket. He called out, nothing. He walked in further, still nothing. The fires were still going, smoke was still rising, but not a single person was there. Then Joe started looking inside the huts, and that's when things went from strange to truly terrifying. In one hut, there was a pot of caribou stew sitting right over the fire, but the fire had burned way down and the food had turned into a black, burnt mess. Whoever had been cooking that meal never came back to eat it. In another hut, he found a woman's sewing kit with the needle still stuck in the fabric, like she had just set it down for one moment and simply never returned. And here's what really got to Joe. These people had left everything behind. Their rifles were still leaning against the walls. Their thick, warm coats were still hanging up. Now think about that for a second. In that kind of cold, leaving without your coat or your gun isn't just strange, it's suicide. Nobody in their right mind would do that. It was as if they had all vanished in the middle of a single heartbeat, with zero time to grab anything. Joe was shaken to his core. He got out of there as fast as he could and reported everything to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. When the officers arrived and started investigating, what they found only made things more confusing. The village sled dogs were still tied to the trees. They had died of starvation, even though there was food sitting in the huts just a short distance away. And then the investigators found something that sent a chill down everyone's spine. An old burial site had been dug up and emptied. For the Inuit people, disturbing the graves of ancestors is one of the most serious things imaginable. Whoever or whatever had done this had crossed a very dark line. But the detail that nobody could explain, the one that made even the most experienced officers go quiet, was the footprints, or rather the lack of them. The ground around the village was covered in fresh snow, soft, clean, untouched snow, and there were absolutely no footprints leading away from the village. None. The only tracks in the snow were Joe Labelle's own footprints leading in. It was as if 150 people had simply been lifted up into the sky. The police worked the case, but eventually had to admit defeat. They had no answers. They declared it officially unsolved and moved on. But the story didn't end there. Decades later, in 1984, 2 writers brought the case back into the spotlight with a theory that made people's jaws drop. They pointed to reports from other trappers who claimed that on the very night the village went silent, they had seen strange glowing lights in the sky above Angikuni Lake. Lights that changed shape and moved in ways no aircraft could. The theory they put forward was alien abduction. And as crazy as that sounds, nobody has ever come up with a better explanation. Because here's the thing, nearly 100 years have passed, and in all that time, not a single one of those 150 people has ever been found. No bodies, no bones, no belongings, no trace of any kind. They are just gone, like they've never existed at all. So I want to know what you think. What happened at Angikuni Lake that night? Was it a disease that forced them to flee? A threat we can't explain? Or something truly out of this world? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story gave you chills, share it with someone who loves a good mystery. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.